she said, I just look at what you get for $300 and it's just not much anymore. And I mean, that's what people are feeling, right?
100%. People are really feeling that. We talked to a woman named Destiny in South Carolina, and she had 3 little kids, all using formula. We know there have been formula shortages too because of the Biden administration's regulations. And she was talking about trying to ration out for a week so there was enough for all 3 kids. And she came to the grocery store event, got the $60 gift card, and that again made her whole, where she felt good about that week. And I'm pretty blessed. My family's blessed. We can afford all the milk that my 3 boys drink in a week. But families are really struggling, and families are making real decisions on what not to do because of inflation and higher prices across the country for everything they buy. It's not just limited to gas or home energy or groceries. Yeah. Everything they buy costs more.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't have to be.
It's bad policy. And, I hope that Americans never just accept that as a way of life.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of American Potential. As we look at starting 2024, we wanted to pause and reflect on what's been able to be achieved this past year. Now, we're doing this in a 4-part series and talking with representatives from Concerned Veterans for America, Libre, Americans for Prosperity, and our very own podcast team, some of whom you haven't met yet, to talk about what stories they enjoyed the most, as well as what the organizations have been able to work on this past year. Now, today's episode is the 3rd in our End of the Year series, and today we're going to talk about Americans for Prosperity. Our guest today has been on before to talk about this year's Prosperity is Possible national tour that focused on highlighting how Bidenomics is a disaster on families' budgets due to rising inflation. So besides highlighting how Bidenomics is not helping Americans, what else has Americans for Prosperity been able to accomplish at both the state and federal level? I want to welcome back Kent Strang, who is the Managing Director for Americans for Prosperity. Kent, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
It's great to have you. It's been an amazing year, incredible year, really. A lot of work that you and your team has done, and the great teams for AFP all across the country, right?
It's been a great year. As I was pulling things and prepping for this, how much we've done in a calendar year just from the AFP side is pretty astonishing. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, so we did this Prosperity is Possible tour, and I want you to maybe talk about that and highlighting the price of gas. I still hear people say, well, gas has gone down now. Are we still highlighting that? Yes, we're still highlighting it because it could sure be a lot lower if we had developed our energy here and if we didn't have the inflation that's driven up those costs. Talk about the Prosperity is Possible tour and how that's been able to highlight some of the bad economic policies of the Biden administration.
Right. What a blast. This year, we wrapped a 30-foot RV. I think you've talked to the team about it this year. We did over 185 Prosperity is Possible events. And these events were really focused exactly what you're talking about. How are people, being impacted by inflation? It's at the grocery store, at the gas station, home energy, and people are making real trade-offs about that. And I think we've talked a lot about that on the shows, but we crisscrossed the country again this year doing events at grocery stores, dropping the price of a gallon of gas down to $2.38. And while it's come down a little bit, it certainly could be a lot better if we have better energy policy. Talking to folks directly about Bidenomics with Bidenomics breakfast because eggs are so expensive, Bidenomics barbecues because meat is so expensive, and really meeting people where they are, talking to them about how does inflation happen through government spending, and then how do we solve it?
We talk about on this show about barriers, government-created, government-imposed barriers for people. The biggest one in every American's life is inflation, and it is government-caused. I mean, that is the cause of inflation. Too much money. Who gets to print money? Government gets to print it. Nobody else gets to print money. So it is government-caused, and we talked about that. What are some of the ways, some of the events maybe you talked about, we've done gas station events, grocery stores, restaurants, all those things. What's some of your favorite events that we did on the tour?
So the gas stations are great because everybody of every walk of life is at a gas station. But I think this year it's been about the grocery store. The average American family was spending $60 more per per week in groceries than they were before President Biden took office. And so what we did is we want to give folks just a little bit of temporary relief. Take them to the grocery store, give them a $60 gift card and let them be whole. We weren't even giving them more than what they had before, but just making them whole. And we would talk to folks, again, making real trade-offs of, hey, I haven't bought this kind of meat in a long time, or I had to go to the off-brand that wasn't my favorite, and talking to folks about the things that they used to enjoy that they've traded off against.
And we all have those stories. You know, I was talking to my wife the other day, and she's ordering groceries, you know, on the Walmart app or whatever, and she just says, you know, I mean, I always try and stay under like $300 a week on groceries, which is a lot of money for people, right? And she said, I just look at what you get for $300 and it's just not much anymore. And I mean, that's what people are feeling, right?
100%. People are really feeling that. We talked to a woman named Destiny in South Carolina, and she had 3 little kids all using formula. We know there have been formula shortages too because of the Biden administration's regulations. And she was talking about trying to ration out for a week so there was enough for all 3 kids. And she came to the grocery store event, got the $60 gift card, and that again made her whole, where she felt good about that week. And you know, I'm pretty blessed. My family's blessed. We can afford all the milk that my 3 boys drink in a week. But families are really struggling, and families are making real decisions on what not to do because of inflation and higher prices across the country for everything they buy. It's not just limited to gas or home energy or groceries. Yeah. Everything they buy costs more.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't have to be.
It's bad policy. And, you know, I hope that Americans never just accept that as a way of life, because we're better than that. You know, when you look at our energy policies around the country versus Europe over the past 30 or 40 years, I mean, what they're paying for energy in some European countries to heat a small home or something, we wouldn't even stand for it in the United States. But you know, inflation steals in such a way that it kind of robs people almost of their common sense and thinking, well, gee, it used to be that way. Well, it can be that way again if we get government back, you know, on a solid footing and a good course, right?
Absolutely. One of the most interesting events we did was on the border of Montana and North Dakota. We went to the Keystone Pipeline graveyard, I think is what they call it. And you saw all the materials. Wow. They're just sitting and rotting in a field. And our team from Montana was showing folks around, they had to show them, like, look at all this infrastructure that's sitting and rusting because of the regulations to finish that pipeline. And that's, you know, more probably safe, affordable energy that Americans could have if they would finish that project. But again, this administration doesn't want to do that. They want to limit production, but that's we all need energy every single day to work and to live, and they want to limit that as much as they can, and that's unfortunate because it would make life more affordable for people.
Yeah, and energy is such a driver of inflation too, right? The more that goes up, that causes everything to go up because everything has to use energy to get delivered.
Right. My dad farms for a living, and I think about to put in a crop because food costs are what people care about, right? And it's like, well, you need diesel fuel to put the crop in, and then you got to use diesel fuel to get the crop out, and then you've got to put it on a truck and take it somewhere. And, you know, that's why your food cost is also going up. Of like, energy is so impactful in our lives that you need affordable diesel fuel and fuel to make life affordable.
Yeah. You know, I have on my phone, I have one of those apps that is connected, I guess, to my credit card. So when I make a purchase, well, let's just be honest, Ken, I put it on there so that when my family makes a purchase, I know, what, we just spent another $100 on Amazon? You're kidding me, right? I can see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it shows me everything I do. And I was up in Wyoming the other day, and I stopped at a convenience store, and I got out, and I thought, well, I'll just grab like a Diet Dr. Pepper. And admittedly, it wasn't like the little bottle. It was kind of the bigger bottle, Diet Dr. Pepper, and a bag of candy. Now, that says a lot about me. I get it. I understand. But it was a long road trip. Had 3-hour drive. And so I got that, and I paid for it. You know how you just hand them your card. You don't really think about it. I get back in the car, and I look at my phone, and it tells me, you just purchased $14 worth of food at this convenience store. And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. all I have is a large Diet Dr. Pepper and a bag of candy, and it was $14. It's incredible to think of that. Yeah. But family after family could tell us a very similar story. Right. And that's what you were doing, out across America, right? Is having families come in, maybe relieving a little bit of their pain through the process, but having them tell their stories and hearing those stories, right?
Right. Washington wants to tell you how great everything is. Oh, inflation is just up a little bit. But when you go actually talk to real people across this country, and it didn't matter if we were in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Montana or Arizona, Nevada, the stories are the same. People are really struggling with this, and to give them a little bit of temporary relief was a good time this year to see how folks are impacted by that and to share those stories that real people are struggling from inflation.
Well, and I'm sure you saw a lot of tears from families and people struggling. I mean, these are real. There's real impacts, and I think that's the sad thing that Washington forgets. I think the Biden administration certainly has forgotten this, and some members of Congress have too. Their decisions have real-world, everyday, terrible impacts on the citizens that have to live under these crazy rules and policies that they've passed.
I can tell you this. We've had members of Congress come out over the last couple of years to events like these at the gas stations and grocery stores, and I think it's been a good reality check for them too. Even folks who are aligned with our policy solutions, that this is real to people, and it's impactful. I know to all the team that have been on this, and you carry those stories with you. And as we go try to fight for good policy and really hone in on the solutions, you carry those stories, you carry those people with you, because it's important to our country and to the future of our country to get this right, to get better policy.
Now, the point of these is not just to have an event and be nice. The point of it is to change policy. Now, I think a lot of people are frustrated with kind of the policies of the Biden administration, certainly, and highlighting that certainly has an impact. But what have been some of the accomplishments, some of the great accomplishments of Americans for Prosperity as you see it in 2023?
It's hard because there is a divided Congress right now, and a president that's probably not going to sign the solutions that we're looking for, considering that he created the mess, but also advanced a bunch of congressional review acts. And so congressional review acts are basically when Congress steps up and kind of rebukes the president. And we saw that on some of the student loan forgiveness. We saw that through ESG efforts to put politically motivated investments in folks' retirements, and it's an opportunity, and on energy, and it's an opportunity for Congress. And those are bipartisan, where senators from the other side of the aisle, the Democratic side of the aisle, would come across and tell the president, that's the wrong way of thinking about this. And so we still have a long road ahead of us to get good policy, but passing things through the House to show Americans what good policy looks like is always a good sign, so we can create a mandate for those policies in the future.
How about at the state level too? I know you deal a lot with the federal stuff, but there've been some amazing. To me, in 2023, it's been the year of education reform. A lot of parents getting out. I talked with Russ Duerstein from CVA a little bit earlier in an interview, and he and I were talking about when government steps in and says, well, this is the way veterans are going to get their health care. That's a bad thing. But I compared it to education and K through 12 education, right? Because that's what we've done for 70 or 80 years, is told kids, you live in this zip code, you're going to go to this school. 2023 was an amazing year in a lot of states, because a lot of states stepped up to the plate and said, we're going to empower parents. That's been an amazing thing that's happened, I think, that AFP has helped drive.
Absolutely. We've helped drive that. I think 7 states passed meaningful school choice reforms this year to put that power back in parents, to fund kids instead of funding those systems.
Yeah. Let's talk about immigration too. I want to talk about immigration a little bit. I think we've done a great job this year of highlighting the mess that the Biden administration has made at the border. There is no border security. We know that. We understand it. But we've done a good job, I think, of obviously kind of explaining that America should have a compassionate immigration system that actually works and lets people who want to be law-abiding citizens and be contributors to our society to come to the United States. But in order to do that, you have to have a system that actually works.
That's right.
And the system is broken. And we've done a good job, I think. Some border trips highlighting some of the problems there.
Right. We did 4 trips to the border this year, 3 in McAllen, Texas, and 1 in Arizona. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to show people the full problem at the border. One, we have a border security issue, but also there are good people that want to come to this country and contribute and have a meaningful life and live that American dream. I mean, that's who we are as a people. And so we show them we meet with border security. We meet with agents and talk to us about the problems, so much that we can't even film in there for their safety. We visit folks who are dealing with this every day, their businesses. There's a water drainage district that we talk to that's right on the Rio Grande, talk to the people that are impacted by it, hear their stories. And we also go to various charities and see the humanitarian part of this, of folks who are trying to flee a bad situation and come to the United States and live that dream. And then we've partnered with a former border security sector chief to go throughout our state chapters and talk about what his experience looks like and how he thinks we could partner together to fix the border and to create good pathways for legal immigration. And then one of the coolest things that I think we did this year that I don't know if a lot of people have seen unless you've been at one of these events is we took a different kind of camera and created virtual reality with the cameras where you can put on the glasses or the goggles, not my thing. And you have a 360 immersive experience. And we bring the idea was, well, we can't take everybody who wants to go to the border. That's hard on some folks, but can we bring it home and walk people through the trip with the 360 goggles? It's a little disorienting. The first time I did it, I about fell over. But it's quite an experience. So if you see any of our state chapters doing events on immigration, we typically have those goggles to have you watch it.
It's a great way to bring people to the border. And so many of those stories, as you were talking it, I was kind of reliving it in my mind because we had Othel Brand, who is that water district director who you talked about. We had Myra Flores on the podcast and did an episode here. We went down to the border in 2 different trips and recorded some episodes down there. So it really has been. Chief Clem was a guest on the podcast, and we loved having him join us to talk about kind of the impossible situation that some of these agents find themselves in, trying to enforce the law, but not given the tools to do it. Yeah, have a terrible job. Yeah, it really is. And, to find out the compassion that they have, some of them giving away their lunch to people who are coming across the border and haven't eaten for days, they're little kids, and these border patrol agents just giving them their sandwich for the day. Just amazing stories like that. That's what's so great about this podcast is we can kind of tell some of those stories. I want to talk real quickly about free speech. We've seen a lot of attacks on free speech, and this sense in America, which I find sad, and we've had lots of good guests. We had Joe Kennedy, who, of course, was the football coach that took a stand, and the Supreme Court took his case. But we've seen, I think, across America, on so many levels, we've seen this feeling that we have to scream at the top of our lungs what our position is, and you have to agree with me, or I'm going to cancel you. That is a terrible thing in our society, and we've got to do our best to fight back on that. First of all, the First Amendment obviously is talking about the government can't infringe upon the free speech rights of citizens, but we also need to teach each other and to respect other people's speech in the traditions of the First Amendment and free speech. What's AFP been doing on that issue, and what can we see maybe looking forward into the future on free speech?
You're 100% right. I mean, it's our first and most fundamental right, the ability to disagree with your government, frankly. And that's a great thing that no matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter what your political beliefs are, that's an area where we should agree. And we need more champions, not just in the halls of Congress, but across the country that believe in free speech. And I read a Sam Adams book earlier this year, and he was obviously had a lot of strong opinions about the way the English were running the country, and would write under pseudonyms and have to hide because he knew that if they ever caught him, saying what he was saying, he was going to be in serious trouble. And in a lot of ways that has not changed since the late 1700s when he was trying to create an American Revolution, frankly. And we have a problem with cancel culture. And so what we've done on free speech is focus on issues like cancel culture, focus on the fact that the government cannot silence you. And we've seen through some of our FOIA requests with AFP Foundation that we've seen that Homeland Security is trying to silence people, trying to work with social media companies to shut down various viewpoints and opinions. You simply cannot do that. That's a fundamental right. And really elevating these issues and building an audience of folks who are ready to preserve and protect the First Amendment across the country, because we need it now more than ever. Yeah.
These are all such important things, I think, that AFP is focused on. It's really the bedrock of our society. And while other people fight about this candidate or that candidate and all that stuff's valuable, people should get involved. People need to pay attention to these issues and help build consensus around them, whether it's free speech or the bad decisions being made by the Biden administration in the economy. What's your favorite moment, if you can tell me, if you can think of it, of the past year?
Can I give you two? Because one just isn't enough.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. I got to get sentimental with you real quick. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
So we had the 30-foot RV for the PIP tour.
Yeah.
And we had to drive. Somebody had to go get this in Chicago. It was a family effort. Our state director in Wisconsin, her father-in-law has the RV place, and so he worked out renting us the RV. And somebody had to get it from Chicago to Alexandria, Virginia, to be wrapped. It's about 900,000 miles. Yeah. And this thing's a behemoth. It's big. It's hard to drive down the road. And so I needed a driver. And I'm like, well, my dad farms. He has a CDL. Like, I think Big Mark can get this thing across the country. And so I convinced my dad on less than a week's notice, Dad, get on a plane with me from St. Louis to Chicago. We got in the craziest Uber drive I've ever been in my life. I didn't think we were going to make it. And then so Dad and I drove from Chicago to DC, essentially in the unwrapped RV that would become the PIP RV. So it was some good quality time with Dad.
Yeah,
and we had a good time. I think he may have enjoyed it more than I did, but it was a good time. Yeah. And then the other one is we did debate watching parties all across the country this year. Yeah. To highlight the issues that we wanted to see the candidates talk about, and I think we did almost 100 of them. And we were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the night that the debate was in Milwaukee, and we were at the Explorium Brew House. We'll give them a little bit of plug. Maybe they'll become a sponsor in the future. The Explorium Brew Pub, and they made us our own beer, the Prosperity is Possible beer.
Yeah, right.
And that was pretty awesome.
That is pretty cool.
I think the people not in Milwaukee that night were pretty envious of the PIP beer.
Yeah. Did you? And how many of those do you have left, Kent? That's the big question.
So.
And now be careful how you answer
I know.
this.
So there's still some, I think there's still some on the bus. And then they were in 4-packs. I took a 4-pack for decoration, not to drink, just so I kind of always had one. And so I've got 4 left, but I was hoping that I could get a hold of one where you and I could have a end of the year, great year toast.
Sure.
And nobody wanted to give them up.
They wouldn't give them up. Well, they're collector's items, I'm sure.
So. I mean, it was an IPA. Do you like an IPA?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
everybody's got their brand. Some people like dark beer. Some people like, various styles, but it was good. Yeah. Balanced IPA.
Yeah. Well, and so there's 4 left.
Well, I have 4 left.
I have to ask the question, how many were there originally?
So let me send you some pictures.
That's a fair question.
Limited run, limited availability.
Okay, all right.
If you really need to get your hands on some PIP beer.
Yeah.
Megan Novak, the Wisconsin state director. But what would you expect? Would you expect anything less from Wisconsin having their own beer?
Yeah. And we just had Megan on. We just did it.
And she didn't
yesterday.
bring you a beer?
Well, it was remote. We had to record remote. So she owes it to us.
All right.
She owes it to us.
I bet she's
around for the podcast staff, I would say.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Let's get I don't even know, can you legally ship beer? I'm sure that's some sort of government barrier.
I don't know. There's probably some barrier there. There's probably some barrier there. Okay, so you traveled quite a bit. what were your favorite states? You talked about like the event up in Montana and South Dakota. Yeah. What were some of the favorite state visits that you made this year?
See, you're going to make me like call out
good
state,
but
bad states.
You're from Illinois.
I'm from Illinois.
Southern Illinois.
St. Louis area.
Yeah. So other than you can't say Illinois, but
no, I won't say Illinois. So I went to Vegas.
Okay.
And you know the Nevada team better than anybody.
Yeah.
They just put on a show. I love working with Wiz and Ronnie and that team.
Yep.
They're always the best host. They're the most fun typically. I think that Ohio had some just amazing events this year, man. Donovan and his team, they've run great events. Ashley and Mary Beth in Wisconsin run great events. Our Wisconsin team ran great events. The Boneyard that we saw with Montana was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, in those border trips, people really made an impact on people's lives. And so, we got across the country with not just Prosperity is Possible events, but with those immigration events. And we really debate watching parties. Like we held a lot of opportunities for people to learn more about our policies and how to make an impact.
Okay, so what's next? Looking into 2024, what do you see for AFP?
I can't wait. The White House might have tried to retire Bidenomics, but I can assure you, I'm not going to let them.
We're not retiring Bidenomics.
I'm not going to retire it at all. We're going to make sure that Americans know that this has been a disaster.
Yeah.
Spending $5.5 trillion in new money in 3 years. People got to be held accountable for that. And it's members of Congress that usher that in and United States senators that usher that in. And we're going to take our grassroots army across the country and we're going to show people like why prices are higher and hold them accountable for those really bad votes. We're going to continue to work on personal options for healthcare. We're going to continue to do border trips and connect folks to our immigration POV. We're going to continue to work on free speech. There's so much work to do. And there's other stuff happening this year, but there's so much work to do. And so if you want to be a part of AFP, now is a great time to do it.
Yeah, and I know the podcast wants to, to partner with you on that. We were talking about how great it would be to go do some free speech events at some of the universities maybe that have been, Supreme Court cases have been decided about a certain university or, travel to some of those places and do some live podcasting events. And so lots of fun stuff coming in the next year. So if people want to learn more about AFP and the great things that AFP does, how can they do that?
Well, just visit the website, go to americansforprosperity.org, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, but reach out. Like, don't sit on the sidelines. America is too important to sit it out. You cannot sit it out. And so we have plenty of opportunities for you to get engaged on a variety of issues, a variety of things that you can work towards to bring real solutions. And so don't sit it out. I know you know that, but don't sit it out.
Yeah.
If you love America and you believe in the future of it and that we can preserve and protect the American dream, come and hang out with us.
Yeah.
Let's make a difference.
Yeah, you got it. Maybe you'll even give them a beer. Maybe.
If it's legal and permissible to do it, sure.
Sounds like the lawyers have told you to say
that. No. Just making sure that I don't get any grief from anybody.
There you go. Sounds good.
Do the right
Thanks
thing.
for joining us, Kent. Appreciate it.
Jeff, thank you so much. Hope you have a great holiday. Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Merry Christmas to you too. You bet. All right. Well, listen, that's what I love about Americans for Prosperity and some of the great things that they did over this last year. Kent talked about Sam Adams and having to write under pseudonyms and all of that. We don't want that kind of an America. We want to be able to stand up and be proud, and we don't want you to have to write under a pseudonym or keep your views to yourself and not express them. This is America. We're better than that. But the only way we can defend those freedoms and have you and your neighbors and your friends and your family be able to go out there and fight for the things that you believe in is to get out there and do it. And we have to get out there and fight. You hear me say it all the time. Liberty and freedom are so precious. We take it for granted all the time. It's like your health. I say that all the time on this podcast. It's like your health. As long as you have health, you're good. As long as you have liberty and freedom, you're good. You take it for granted. But when it becomes threatened or it becomes endangered, that's when you realize how precious freedom really is. Well, freedom is precious, whether it's threatened or not. Remember that. Fight for it. Go out there and defend liberty and freedom. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.